Well, they had done that all along the Columbia River. Our Queer Dam stopped a lot of the fish from going up into the lake, and that all had effects on the traveling of the fish. And Celilo Falls, I talked to this fellow by the name of Totus. He's quite influenced down there in Yakima. I took him out to Charlotte. His wife had some inherited land out there. We got talking about Celilo Falls, and he voted against getting rid of it. He says, I told them guys we never would be paid for what we lost or going to lose. And he said, all the rest of them went for it. And he said, now they can see it. And Hungry Horse, quite a bit same way. Fish used to go up to Flathead and on up to South Fork. Can't get up there anymore. Down at Celilo Falls, they try to put in ladders, but I don't think they work. And any place that there's any dams, they're bound to make an effect.
Do you remember the specific effects of the Thompson Falls Dam in this area?
Huh?
Do you remember what happened after they built Thompson Falls in this area? The Thompson Falls Dam?
Well, there used to be a lot of dolly varden or bull trout, they call them. Fish like that had come up from the Pond Lakes. And Jocko used to have them down there around Dixon. I remember when old Charlie McLaughlin used to fish there at the mouth of the Jocko. Certain times a year he'd go up there to fish for bull trout. Well, that was after the dam was built. Well, after all of that stuff got out of there, there was nothing to bring it back. Just like for years, well, Joe Ladderudge married my cousin. He had a friend down there at Bull River. And he went down there a couple of times with that guy, and they were hooking, snagging bull trout. And by golly, they'd done that a couple of years, and they closed that. Same way with Thompson Falls. I think Prospect Creek comes in there, and the guys used to put 2 white rags on their leader, and when them bull trout was trying to get up the river, well, that's where they'd throw their hooks in these big holes and wait till one of them got in between there and they were snagging them. Well, they outlawed that. And they get between them places, there's nothing there to bring it back. The only way you can get it back is restock it. Just like they're talking about sockeye now. A girl yesterday on TV, I think she said there was 4 eagles showed up there, and they counted 20 sockeye. Well, and that's the thing, after they get so many gone, why there's nothing to replace it. Fluctuating of the lake, water's up one day and down the next. I remember old Peter Charlie used to trap beaver there above the agency. I said to him one day, I says, how's trapping? Oh, he said, I quit. He says, one day, he says, you can't get your trap. He says, next day your trap's way up on the ground. So he said, I quit. Everything changed. Farming, agriculture. made a change. The irrigation has took all of the main native fish away. You don't see any native whitefish anymore. Cutthroat trout, the only place you can find them is you get up on these little mountain streams. And just a rare case if you'd ever catch a little bull trout on Post Creek now. We used to always could tell when we'd catch them because they were cutthroat was kind of lively, and he'd jump up, and there wasn't much pull on your line. But when you'd hook a bull trout, you could always tell because he was solid when you hooked onto him.
Can you tell me about how you used to fish for bull trout at your place there along Post Creek when you were a kid?
Oh, we didn't fish for bull trout. We was always catching old native trout, and once in a while you'd hook onto a bull trout, but we never fished for him. The Jocko seemed to have more bull trout in it, and the river, they stayed in the river. And Flathead Lake used to have a lot of them, because there used to be an old Indian by the name of Julian. He lived up there, just kind of west of Elmo. And on the north side of that Elmo Bay, why, he had a place where he'd ice fish. Every once in a while he'd send some fish down to my aunt at Narada by the mailman. One day had a bull trout about that long, and he had 2 whitefish still sticking out of his mouth about like that. So Angus was a school kid then, and he cut him open. I think he said he counted 40 little whitefish that was in him. Now there ain't too many bull trout there anymore.
Well, I guess the last thing I was going to ask you to tell us about was when you ran, how you ended up running for the council.
Well, we lived up there in the northwest corner of the reservation. And it was all Kootenai country. I lived with the Kootenays for 35 years or better. My 2 daughters, all their playmates was Kootenai kids. So we never paid too much attention to what was going on the reservation. And we kind of sat by ourselves. And the first thing that happened was they come in here with what they call a Baker purchase plan. No, I'm getting ahead of my story. No, that happened before that. This Baker purchase plan come up. Well, hell, they bought land here and place at Dayton. We never even knew about it over home. One day I come home to visit my dad, and he said, "You get your per capita payment?" I said, "No." I said, "They got one?" "Yeah." He says, "Some are getting 107 and some 111. I said, "Hell, I never knew that." "Yeah." He said, "You better go to agency and see." My dad's older brother and my name are the same. So I went down there and asked about my check and found out he had it. So I had to run him down, and he gave me a check for it and then give me a having the same name. I said, well, I tried to get it changed because we were getting. So anyhow, I come over to visit my dad. And we sitting outside, and car drove in. I said, Dad, you got company. So he went out the car and pretty soon come back. He says, them guys are looking for you. So I went out and I said, what do you want? And they said, by God, this Howard and Wheeler Act is going into effect and we have to have a councilman from Hot Spring. And we want you to run. I said, gee, I never even paid any attention to that. They said, yeah. I said, we decided you was the guy we wanted. So,
Who were they?
a feller by the name of Fred Brown and a feller by the name of Jimmy Lozo. He had allotments up on the north end of the reservation. So anyhow, he says, you go over to the meeting. So I went over. Yeah, I said, you'll have to sign up because we're going to have an election in a few days if you're interested. So I told him, I says, if I can do you guys any good, I'll run. If I can't do you any good, I want you to tell me and I'll get the hell out. So they had the election. Old Dave Couture run from Camas Prairie, and old Lady Burgess, and myself. And I got more votes than the both of them put together. So when we had our first meeting, I don't know, it was first, second meeting, old Dave showed up. And when I was on the council, there was quite a few Indians yet that talk, but they like to have an interpreter. And when I was on the council, I'd always ask the chairman to have somebody interpret to them, whether it was Kootenai or Flathead. So old Dave come in, and I said to the chairman, I said, I think Dave wants us to talk here about something. So he went up, he said, I want to contest that election. Charlie ain't supposed to be in our district. So after he got through talking, he said, well, what about it? And I said, well, I don't know what he's talking about. I said, we went to the sub-agency at Hot Springs for anything we had to have done. If it was too big there, we went to the agency. I said, we never did deal through Elmo and the Kootenays. So they overrode it, and I stayed on. Well, it didn't hurt Mrs. Burgess any. Old man Bullhead was kind of a sub-chief of the Camas Prairie Pond. He was pretty well upset over it. And old Dave, he got over it in a week or two. We got to be good friends. So I served out my 4 years, and it was a rough deal. God, nobody had money. We didn't have anything to go on. Right after the last depression, some had cars to travel in, some didn't. Some had to ride the bus or get somebody to take them. And every time I come over, I'd generally have to stay with my dad and mother up here at Post Creek or something. And we did have one thing, though, that if a job come up, if it was a mission district, Ronan or whatever it was, we always asked that councilman to get somebody that he knew would want a job to do the work. not them. Well, years later, when politics got pretty big, especially on fires, a lot of them guys from the office would take leave time to go out on a fire. And even the councilman, and here we were sitting there. There was nothing. So when I got my 4 years in, I'd lost my daughter in the meantime, and so that I told them I was through.
Did you have to travel by horseback?
Not too much. Before that was all horseback traveling. I could come to the agency. It was 35 miles from our place to Perma. Then we figured about 15 from there up to Dixon. We used to ride from Norada to Dixon to my aunt's place, stay there. And once in a while I rode into Perma and caught the train to Ravala. They had a local train then. But I rode all over the reservation. I horseback outside of the South Fork of the Jocko, and I don't know too much about it.
Oh, one other thing. You were telling me about working on fires.
Huh?
You told me some about working on fires.
Yeah, I packed on some big fires. In 29, that picture up on the wall, I was out at Powell Ranger Station on the Locksaw, and I packed on a big fire there about 20-some miles below Powell. We had must have had 300 head of stock from both ways, from Idaho and Montana. And we wound up, Fort Missoula's running, and they took even a bunch of them Army mules out there and made pack horses out of them. When they led them down to take them out in the trucks, one soldier to each mule, and he just polished to a T. Well, he was a sad old boy when they come out of there, I guess. I didn't get to see it. And then I packed on a big fire out on the Yaak River. Started in Idaho, and burnt into Montana, into Canada, and then joined back up in Idaho. We had about 300 head of stock on that. And then a couple of years after, I went back to the Yaak, about 6 miles below where I was on another fire there. Then I packed on a fire out in the St. Joe, and I went to work for the Remount. I packed a few fires there, and then I was a district packer up at Star Meadows in Albany, and I worked there one summer. The rest of my forestry work was done here at the agency.
Were there a lot of Indian men working on fires in those days, just like now?
Yeah, we tried to get all of them because they knew where they were going and how to get there. Like we'd have a big lightning strike up here pretty high in the Mission Mountains. There was 2 or 3 of them Pichette boys was alive then. And you could always depend on them. They'd go right now, and they were good in the hills. Them Kootenai boys was good in the hills. So we had good luck that way.
What about the off-reservation fires? Were there a lot of Indian men working on those?
Yeah, down there in the Lochsa there was quite a few boys. In fact, there was two bunches. There was one bunch that I took in. They had a bunch of Butte guys and Indians from Marley, Fisher boys and some of the others. We took 2 days to get them down to where they were going, at what they call Indian Post Office. And there was quite a bunch of them on there. But Indian boys, a lot of the forestry guys would like to get them because they knew that they were pretty solid. They knew where the hell they were at and where they were going. I know that Lochsa fire, old Louis R. Lee, before I got on that fire, they kind of lost him. They thought maybe he got burnt up. So he come out the next day and, no, he said, I wasn't lost. He said, on that fire, see where it was going to go. He said, there was a little lake down there. He said, I went down and stayed around that lake till it was over.
Okay.
So he come out that way, and they were all, now when I went down there on that big fire, we was packing 22-mile blow pile. First day I had to go down there, and it was a pretty hot fire. It had a 15-mile front on it. And so they started telling me where to go, this creek and trail number, so and so. I said, the hell with that, I said.